Hi everyone, my name is Jill and I'm an alcoholic. I want to thank Anna for inviting me to speak tonight. I'm honored to be here and to tell my story. Not only am I an alcoholic in recovery, but I'm a family member of alcoholics and addicts, and I've lost people very dear to me to this disease. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that later in my story. But as part of my program, I've been taught to go through a couple housekeeping items. I got sober April 7th, 2012. I have not had a drink or a drug since that day. I have a home group. I have a commitment in that home group. I have a sponsor. I sponsor women. And I work the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. So my story is really just going to tell you my experience, strength, and hope. And hopefully somebody might be able to take one thing that I say and, it could touch their lives or help them in some kind of way. So really my story starts like most people. I started drinking at a young age, just dabbling and having fun with friends. There wasn't a lot of harm going on, and I really had a lot of fun. And that kind of continued on through my high school years. I definitely partied and had a lot of fun, I'll say, but looking back, I can tell you that I put myself into a lot of jackpots and risky behaviors because of my drinking, and I just thought that was part of alcohol. Like, I didn't realize that people didn't do those behaviors or didn't wake up and not remember the entire day before or the entire weekend. I thought blackouts were just part of the gig. Like, I didn't realize that people didn't drink like me. And maybe that's because I hung out with people that did drink like me. And then also I've, had parents that were active alcoholics at that time. My older brothers were actively using, and my sister was using and drinking with me. So it really just seemed very normal to me. And I was that person that always would point the finger and say, well, look at them, I'm not as bad as them, and so I must be okay. And I never wanted to be an alcoholic, so I thought that I could outsmart it, that I would be different. I really believed that I could drink the way that I wanted to drink, but I would not become an alcoholic. I did pretty well in school. I played sports. I went off to college because I thought that if I went to college and get away from my family, that my problems would go away. Not realizing that I am my problem, and I took myself right with me. And yes, I did a little bit better in some senses when I went to college, but I definitely partied and put myself in risky situations and blackout drinker pretty much all the time. But I thought it was fun and I enjoyed it, and I just, like I said, it was so much, it was pretty much everything to me. I mean, I really wanted to succeed in life and I was determined to have a career, but I really wanted to just drink and party the way that I did then for the rest of my life. Like, I couldn't imagine my life without alcohol. And I didn't know why people wouldn't drink alcohol. So, we talk about this disease as a progressive illness, and I didn't understand that for a long time until I came into AA. But now I understand, and I can look back and see that I have a progressive illness, and as I got older, my disease progressed. And there was that time when I just crossed that line, and there was no going back. When I was 24 years old, my brother, who was closest to me in age and closest to me in relationship, he passed away from IV use infection, and I had no idea how to grieve or to talk about the loss. All I knew was how to drink, and at that time, I was already addicted to pills, but I just crossed the line and there was no going back. I went to a dark, dark, dark place after that. And I stayed there for a long time until I started hitting some bottoms and experiencing some consequences that just didn't feel right. I did, for a long time, lower my standards so that my bottoms were more acceptable to me. But until they finally got to a point where it just was, I don't know how much lower I could go. And, there were moments where it was like, this isn't who I am. This isn't what I'm meant to do. What are you doing? And I had, thank God, I had people that loved me that said those things to me as well. So off to rehab I went, and, I did try getting sober. I just didn't know much about the disease of alcoholism. I didn't understand the obsession that I was feeling, the compulsion to use, even though I had no reason to. I had a lot to lose and nothing to gain. I just still wanted to. So those were, the things that we talk about in Alcoholics Anonymous, that I'm unmanageable and powerless over alcohol. And I didn't realize it at the time. And it took me a few more years to understand that and to accept that, and some lower bottoms before I was able to take step one and admit that I was powerless over alcohol and that my life was completely unmanageable. I was, at that time, I had a young son. He was 3 years old. I was in an abusive relationship with an alcoholic and drug addict, which was nothing short of a nightmare. I really couldn't hold a job. I was fired from my jobs. My friends I didn't really have any. They didn't want to be around me anymore. I had a few family members that were still holding out hope for me. I'm not sure why, but they did, and thank God they did, because, their love and support and encouragement is really kind of what helped me to change and to take some action in my life. So I did have some periods of sobriety before my sobriety date that I talked about earlier, and I went through almost 2 years in the program in the Norwich area by going to meetings and doing some fellowship, but I just really hadn't, I didn't go through the steps. I kind of got hung up on the God of my understanding. I just was kind of defiant towards that. So I was stuck, and there was no spiritual change in me, and when the other shoelace broke, I drank. And looking back, it's not really a surprise that I did, but it was pretty bad, and it was like everything that had gotten back in my life in those 2 years, I lost in like a couple months, and even more. I had a job back, I lost that. I had an apartment, I lost that. I had my son, I lost him too. It was pretty bad. My relapse was, it was just a really dark, dark time. And I had I guess what they say is like a belly full of booze and a head full of AA. So I was understanding everything I had heard, that, once I picked up, I couldn't stop. Like, these were things I had heard, but I didn't really so much believe them. And then I was living it, and I would say to myself in the morning, I'm not going to drink today. I'm not going to use today. And by 10 o'clock, I was at the package store, and by 11 o'clock, I was calling the dealer, and it was just all over again. And it was just like that cycle every single day. I got arrested. I got overdosed at my son's school. I had DCF in my life. I mean, everything that I did not want was happening. And I felt like I was watching my life watching somebody else's life through my eyes, but it was mine. It was so weird. So eventually I lost everything. There was no one more I could blame. There was no one else that I could say, well, it was their fault, or I'm not as bad as them, because it was all me. No one was around. I was the only one left. And it was really hard to deny that I was an alcoholic and needed help, and that I could not do this on my own. So after a really bad weekend, I went to see my counselor at SCAD, and I just said I needed help, and he helped me, and we started calling beds for inpatient rehab. And I called a girl I knew from AA, and she picked me up that night and brought me to a meeting. And when I walked into the Occam Monday night group, they didn't turn me away. They didn't say, you're not welcome here. What is wrong with you? You know, you're the worst person in the world. They hugged me, they gave me a book, and they told me they were glad to see me and to keep coming. And I will never be able to repay how I felt in that moment, because I did feel like the worst person in the world. So anyway, so since that day I've been sober, and life is completely different. I have such wonderful people in my life today, and I'm just so grateful. The same people that helped me at that Monday Occam night group are people I still talk to today, and still help me when I attend that meeting, even though I don't live in the area anymore. I have been able to work all of the steps. I have had a spiritual experience as a result of working the 12 steps. And, you know, my life is pretty fantastic. I have my son back. I fought for custody for 2 years to get him back, but he's back, and now he's a teenager and driving me nuts. And sometimes I wish he'd go back to his grandparents, but that's a joke. I have another baby today. I've been married in sobriety. I have a job. I have the same job that I started when I got sober. They want me to come to work every day, believe it or not. You know, I think most of all, what's really great is that I've gotten to know myself. You know, I've been able to set boundaries with family that aren't doing well. I've been able to laugh and have fun without alcohol. And today I can't even imagine a life with alcohol, because I just know what it will do to me. I will lose everything that I have. I'm not that person that has been able to ever drink one drink. I never wanted one drink, so one drink is just nothing. It's just nothing for me. You know, and I know that I will never have a cure, which is why I still go to meetings regularly. I meet with my sponsor regularly. I meet with my sponsees regularly. I really work hard to keep my sobriety, because really it is the most important thing that I have. Because without it, everything else that I love, I wouldn't have. So, you know, I've been through some ups and downs in sobriety. I've lost my other brother, more or less to his addiction. My son's father died from a heroin overdose a few years ago. So all of my running buddies are not here anymore. And I thank God every day that I have the opportunity to get up and draw another sober breath. And what, you know, that's why I come out and do these commitments, and because I know I'm not sure which part of what I'm doing is keeping me sober, so I just keep doing the things that I was taught in the beginning. You know, go to meetings, don't drink, help another alcoholic, and clean house. I mean, it's a simple program, but you have to want it and you have to work for it. And I want it and I work for it, and I'm just a very grateful alcoholic in recovery today. So that's really all I have, and I thank you for having me here tonight.